All right, we are live. Welcome, ladies and gentlemen, the Robby Rose Show, episode 91. Got Randy Sullivan here. Randy, I want to start. I'll try to be respectful of your time, but I'm sure you and I can probably go for a couple days here straight. But
right.
Hey, thank you for taking the time today, man, and hopping on. Welcome. How you doing today?
I'm doing great, man. Great to talk to you. I've been watching from afar for a long time and like what you're doing. I'm stoked about this.
No,
and nobody ever responded to a text with me at my age with dope, as that was like.
Well, I'm from California, right? So it makes sense.
I know friends don't say that. So.
I'm gonna have a count. I'm gonna have like a tracker of how many times we can use the word paradox in this.
Okay, there you go. Yeah, that's the $10 word that you love. Yeah,
well, because I was trying to like decipher, and I'll include like a bunch of links in the show notes for this episode, so for my audience, like to get a better visual. But the one video that I texted you about, and I said, hey, can I use this? Was it was like truth and paradox or something?
Yeah, truth and paradox.
Because I wanted to use that because I'm like super passionate about the whole like the variance of throws, you know, and doing all that. Right. So for the audience listening, we'll piggyback off the most recent podcast, Randy, that I'm sure you're aware of, as far as you know, the revolution in throwing rehab. We'll touch on that, but there's going to be a lot of things that I also want to touch on. But first and foremost, man, if you don't mind giving the audience kind of a background story and how you got to, you know, where you're at now.
Okay, so my baseball playing career was less than illustrious. I was a bad shortstop who couldn't field ground balls, so they made me a catcher, so I could catch the ones they threw, you know. And so I played at the Citadel, the Military College of South Carolina, the only military academy to ever make it to the Division I College World Series. Thank you. 4 years after I left, they had to get rid of some guys like me, right? So after that, believe it or not, my first job, because the way I paid for college was through an Air Force ROTC scholarship, right? And I was a walk-on the baseball team. And I became a nuclear missile launch officer for 5 years. That was my job. That's scary. When you get to know me, that's really scary. I was in charge of your nation's nuclear weapons arsenal, which is frightening.
Gosh.
It's frightening, okay? So then from there, I found out about this deal that they would send one person of the Air Force to physical therapy school at the Army's physical therapy school. So I applied for that, and I got it. And then I ended up getting stationed at MacDill Air Force Base in Tampa, started having kids. My kids were in baseball. I was coaching them, doing physical therapy and coaching for 15 years before it occurred to me that these two things kind of work pretty well together, you know? I mean, I was a little bit of a slow learner there. Started applying some of those principles, and I got into the throwing thing because my oldest son was a 79-mile-an-hour lefty who couldn't get a scholarship. And I was like, how do we teach him to throw harder? And everybody back then said, it's impossible, it's genetic. And I'm like, come on, dude, it's a movement. I teach movement all day. I'm a physical therapist. If I can teach someone who just had a stroke to walk again, I might be able to find 2 miles an hour in my kid. I don't know. So,
what year was this?
2008.
Okay.
I think. So 11 years ago, right? And we went out to Ron Wolforth's place, and he was the first guy that ever said, yeah, you can do this. We'll teach you how. And so we started working the process, and he did really well. Went from 79 to 93 in 2 years, and coming out of JUCO, he had his 14-point-something strikeouts per nine is what he was, and had his pick, you know, name the school he wanted to go to. And so that was cool, and we realized that a lot of the things that we were doing, that we were teaching, that we kind of expanded upon what Ron was doing was it was going to help the guys that were coming to our physical therapy practice. We were sort of collecting baseball players because we were coaching and we had a clinic, right? And so people would come by and go, hey, I heard you're the baseball guy. And what we realized is that when we would rehab them in the traditional way and then send them out after 6 weeks, they would go and they would throw just like they threw before they got hurt. Mm-hmm. And then they would come back and they were hurt again. So they kept cycling through. So we had this gap, right? And I'm like, we have to figure out how to change something else because we haven't really changed anything. They're still throwing the exact same way they threw. And they're wondering why we still get hurt, right? And so we started digging into that process and, you know, wrote a few books about stuff like that, published some stuff, and people started showing up. And we had some guys got better. It was really cool. It's really, you know, like anything, when we first started out, we were considered heretics and radicals. And you would have thought that we hated babies and wanted puppies to die, right? And seriously, I'm just trying to help you.
That's usually how most good things start, though, right?
Yeah.
Look at Amazon.
I know, exactly. And but what happened is our players literally kicked the door down for us. They got so good. We had some guys that popped, and we had a bunch of dudes, a couple of guys, first rounders, second rounders, third rounders. We had some guys in the big leagues reach out to us, and we helped them, and it just kind of snowballed. And now, like, we just had our skill acquisition summit last week, And we had 16 major league teams. I think we had like 75 reps from major league clubs there asking us how to teach their players how to get better, which is really
huge.
It's better than sitting in a hole in the ground in the middle of Nebraska waiting for orders that never come.
You can say that again.
It's a better job than that. So yeah, it's a lot of fun.
Well, it's huge too, because like when MLB organizations are like checking the ego at the door, right, and saying like, okay, well, now we need to reach out for help, because that doesn't happen, or at least it never did.
The tide is shifting though, Robby. It is. You can see it happening. I think clubs are realizing that there's no salary cap on player development. And for the first time, the science of motor learning and skill acquisition is showing us that if you do it the right way, you can accelerate the learning process and you can develop players faster and better than ever before. And so it's a whole lot cheaper for them to invest in player development than it is the aging free agent that's going to cost them forever after they get done.
Well, too, like another dynamic of that too is like they didn't funnel enough money like into the player development, because they just thought, hey, like you mentioned earlier, like, oh, it's just genetics, like this is what you have, and that's why like high power output throwers are so rare, you know. And it was like, okay, even though this guy goes out and throws 25 pitches and throws one strike, like we're still going to sign him because we can't teach velocity.
Yeah, and I think now they're realizing, team by team is realizing, man, you can. I think they're feeling like they're better off finding decent players and then investing in the development of those players rather than going to pick players. I think the shift is we're no longer in the business of picking superstars. We're in the business of choosing candidates and then helping them become superstars, which is really cool. Really cool.
It's so interesting, because I got drafted in 2010, where it was like I wrote a blog on this. Like I got drafted and I was like looking at all the MLB stuff, and it was like average Major League fastball 88.5, you know.
Right.
And then you literally and a decade isn't that long in the grand scheme of things. It's not that much time, and now we've increased. What are we, like 94 or something like that? And I know a huge part of that too is like the mental component of, oh, now I can teach that, right? Or now I can learn that. And now it's like, now you're seeing it everywhere, you know. Now we have like programs for it.
It has gone crazy, you know, like 95 is nothing anymore. People are just, I mean, it's nuts.
I'm coming back from an injury right now, and I'm like, I'm behind 14 8 balls, but it's like, it's 100 or bust. It really is. Like, I got to put myself in that position just because like, I don't have a job. But I think when you look at it that sense too, like, you know, in the sense of, okay, now it's to the point where like if I have a goal of playing professional baseball and I'm not here, then I'm done. So it's like now you're being super intentional to get to that, you know, miles per hour, because you won't be.
And the thing is that like, the problem I see is, we were talking about this earlier, information can be the enemy, right? Like when we first started, no one said you could teach velocity. And now there's a velocity camp on every corner. Some of it's good and some of it's not, right? Sure. And so how does a guy sift through what's real and what's not? My big thing is if the gains are based solely on intent, which I got to confess, when we first started, we were just like, all right, let's start throwing it hard and figure out what happens, right? If they're not based on improved mechanical efficiency, like optimizing link tension relationships and the mechanical and elastic properties of your muscles and the efficiency of your movement, if it's only on intent, it doesn't last, because eventually, you know, in nature the body wants to achieve goals and conserve energy. You know, in nature it wants to eat and propagate, right? So survive and propagate. So, you know, and the species that does that and conserves the most energy wins the race, right? So the cheetah goes after the slow gazelle because he knows I can eat that guy and then have enough energy to go make a baby with mama cheetah tonight. And if he goes after the fast one, he runs out of gas. He doesn't have enough. And so in nature, your body wants to achieve your goals. So for our pitchers, it's no longer eating and making babies, thank goodness. It's like throwing over the white thing, making the guy go back to the dugout, and hopefully doing it in a way that makes the guys with the radar guns want to put you on their team and the chicks want to go out with you, right?
Oh, yeah.
And so
emphasis on the second part.
Yeah. And so, and when you can do that and optimize energy by being mechanically efficient, like really finding optimal link tension relationships, co-contracting to amplify the force production capacity, and then doing it in a way that fits your hardware, that links it up perfectly so that you're not burning calories working against yourself, then your body goes, wow, this is what I want to do, and it's sort of natural, okay? And so it wants to do that. But in nature, in a one-off event, if it's just one-off, the body will find any way it wants to do it. So the animal in nature, if it only has to survive once, it doesn't seek out energy conservation. It just does it any way it wants, right? So the mother will go lift up the car one time, right? And so I think that when we train with intent as the only guide, right, which a lot of programs do, I think what happens is the body eventually burns too many calories, and either you break or your body goes, hey man, you lied to me, you told me I was only going to have to do this once, because I think you fool yourself into thinking it's a one-off event, right? Because it's all intent and emotion, and you can do it, but if you don't do it with mechanical efficiency improvements, then to me it doesn't last. It's unsustainable. So the people out there trying to add velocity, I think you have to. Who doesn't? I mean, look, nobody's going to put you on the team if you don't go hard.
Adapt or die, man.
But you got to do it in a way that's based on improving the movement. Intent is important. Look, it's the starting point. You've got to try to throw hard, right?
Yeah.
But then we have to add into it guided intent. We have to guide that intent toward improved efficiency, so that's sustainable. Otherwise, I think that's what dead arm is. I think dead arm is just, we burn too many calories for too long, and your body goes, we're not doing this anymore. You're making this too hard, And I think that's what happens with a lot of injuries. I think what happens to old guys that play in the league for a while, and then their stuff starts to fade. They just have this accumulation of calories burned by just being less efficient.
So I know, like, my audience is going to go right off the bat, like, okay, so I got the intent, like, that's great. Okay, all right, now mechanical efficiency, got it. What does that look like? I mean, like, we talk about the anatomy being different for everyone, right? So, like, when we talk about mechanical efficiency, what is that? I mean, I'm sure it's tailored to, like, the specific individual, right?
Of course, because we call it linking the hardware to the software, okay? We link the hardware. The hardware is how your body's built. Some we can change, some we can't. Like if you just have tight tendons and muscles, we can stretch those. We can make you more flexible. If it's a bony structure thing, like either anteverted or retroverted hips, that might dictate how you move. And so you're going to have to, each guy's going to be different. And then the software is how his body is choosing to execute the task. And our job is to identify what the hardware is and then link it to the software and say, all right, is this guy moving? I think, one of my big hobbies is music. I used to be a lead singer in a rock and roll band.
I got to dig that up. You on YouTube, man?
And karaoke. I'm a karaoke.
There you go.
Anyway, so the thing is, like in music, it's like a guitar chord, right? You can play a G and an A and a D, but you can't have an F sharp in there, right? And so if you can move a lot of different ways, but if one of your movements is a G and one's an A and one's an F sharp, it's out of sync. And so it has to be in harmony. When you get it right, it looks smooth. We talked about the physiology a lot in the summit, a lot about that, about finding optimal link tension relationships and then co-contracting to take the slack out of the system so you can amplify your what we call angel dust, PCP, power, control, and protection, right? And so if you can find those optimal links and co-contractions, the movement looks smooth, it looks effortless. When things are out of sync, it's jerky. There's jerky.
And you can perceive that too.
Yeah, and these guys that throw like easy gas, they're so connected and synced up.
Sure.
Look, I promise you that if you can throw the ball 100, you're trying to throw 100.
Sure.
Nobody's not trying to throw the ball 100 now.
Right.
Do it. So I think that those guys that can do it and it looks so easy, I think they're just so connected and timed up that their guitar string is like boom, everything is in harmony. Nothing's out of sync and they roll.
Well, it's about the effortless velocity, man. That plays too, because then we can go into the conversation of like pitch deception, pitch profile, like all these other things.
Yeah. Well, when you talk about effortless, though, that term can be misinterpreted because it sounds like I'm not trying.
Sure.
It's just, I would like to call it synced up velocity. Like let's get everything in sync and harmony and then move. And it looks effortless, although the intent is still the same.
And then the feedback, right? Like that's where I'm big on, is like the immediate feedback. And it's funny, I was just clipping together some video of my last throwing session, and it was like I mic myself up just so like I can go back to it and listen. And like you'll see that, even though maybe the miles per hour will be the same, I'll say to myself like that's the one that felt effortless, right? Because you're moving through time and space so efficiently, and you're getting into such optimal positions that like and I even say this in my long toss, like how far can I throw it, how hard can I throw it without even thinking arm speed, and just get that thing up and then whip.
And in motor learning science, that's called intrinsic knowledge of results. It's the athlete feeling like little navigational beacons inside his body going, boom, boom, I'm going to hit it, and it's just perfect. And there it is, right? And now the problem is if you try to seek out each beacon, you get stuck on one beacon. You're like, because like when I used to be a singer, like you'd always have to be thinking one line ahead. You're singing this line, right? And now you're already on to the next line, right? And you can't take a minute to go, wow, I hit that lick pretty good. And whoa, I'm not, that's how people forget the words to the national anthem.
I correlate that to like mountain biking too. Like I go down a freaking hill and like you got to be looking ahead, but you got to like get into that flow state of like not thinking about point A, point B, point C, because that's when you freaking
exactly. You can't be internally focused. And so we let our guys, I try to get them to share with me what they felt that started the move, right? Like, tell me what you felt on that great pitch that you just said, wow, that feels, I call that motor control nirvana, right? When you get through the hardware problems, the mobility problems, and then you get through the biomechanical disconnections that come for a variety of reasons. Largely, one of them is taught by well-meaning people with incomplete information.
Sure.
Another one is looking for energy in the wrong places. Another one is protective from injury. You're just still in protect mode and you're moving differently. And then, so there's lots of reasons people disconnect biomechanically and do things that are unnatural. But once they get through those two things and they hit what I call motor control nirvana, it's like, it happens like that. It can happen in one day. Like I did this blog on Jake Odorizzi. With his permission, he was working with us, and he just wasn't separating his lower half from his upper half. I don't like the term. He wasn't finding, he was moving as a block, okay? Which means I'm not taking advantage of the elastic and mechanical properties of my abdominals. I'm not optimizing that. And so after 3 weeks, he didn't have any mobility issues. He was pretty connected, except for that. I'm like, why is his body choosing to move that way?
Right.
And it occurred to me, he had an injury lifting a couple of years ago.
Yeah.
He was still protecting.
He was compensation issues, yeah.
So we gave him some unstable loads, some perturbations, and literally in a day he had it. And when he threw it, he was like, he looked at me, he goes, this is my happy face. I'm really, really happy. I'm like, Jake never gets happy.
No, I did a post on that because he did that MLB Network interview. And I think he dropped your name, I think.
I think, that was crazy.
Yeah.
It's crazy. But what a super guy. But somebody called me out. I put this blog with all his videos in it of what we did to help him feel it, right? And it was with his permission. He said I could do it. And somebody called me out and said, wait a minute, that's not true, because he had the same shirt on in every video that you put in there. You're telling me that he trained in the same shirt every day. I'm like, no.
One day.
One day. It's like, boom, you got it. You know that. When you feel it, you feel it. You got it.
Well, and then it doesn't go away because that's like that mental thing.
Because you get hormones released, you get like the urge to do it again, and it's natural because you accomplished your goal. You ate and you made a baby and you saved calories, right?
That was good.
It's nature.
Yeah, and we found it really good, so then we repeat.
I want to do that again.
And then sorry for interrupting, but like the fine line of that too is like, and I went through this as well, is like you have an athlete that's so like intent of okay, I got to get mechanical efficiency. I want to like feel my body through time and space. I want to check all the boxes, right? Because you want to optimize your performance. And then you get like, this is where I got, whereas that information overload where you're now, when you're trying to throw a baseball and you're trying to do it athletically, you're getting like super robotic because you're trying to like feel. And that was my biggest thing, man, because I was drafted pretty high and then I got into it. And obviously being a young guy, I was, yes, sir, yes, sir, yes, sir to everyone. And you have this paralysis by analysis. And I just completely got away from my natural athletic ability of throwing a baseball because I was thinking about all these points. So like talk about how that fine line is and how you guys kind of like from the instruction side, get away from that and teach athletic, but teach biomechanical efficiency.
Yeah. So thank goodness for implicit learning. Okay. Because in motor learning science, you have explicit learning, which is cognitive, top down, driven by the coach, sort of guided toward this mythological ideal model. Get your elbow up, stay back, you're flying open. Verbal cue, really heavy on verbal and cognitive cues. And sometimes athletes are trained their entire life with what I call TWIT coaching. It's TWIT. It's an acronym. It stands for tell you what to do, watch you do it, inform you of everything you've done wrong, and then tell you how to do it better. And that's explicit teaching. I was a TWIT for a long time, okay?
Sure.
Explicit learning, we learn slower. The words, the verbal cues get in the way, right? Because when I say this all the time, okay, what does it mean when I say you're flying open?
I'm flying open.
Tell me what it means. What does it mean?
My front side's bailing.
I'm at your hip. I'm at your lower half. You see what I did? Like, if you just said your lower half, I would have chosen the other. Words are 3 degrees away from execution, right? Sure. And so words get in the way. And we can measure the amount of time it takes for a neurologic impulse to go from your brain to your muscles and back up to your brain again. And there's not enough time in the amount of time you have to make a pitch for any of that information to exchange hands by way of conscious thought, right? Mm-hmm. So we can no longer continue to teach you a skill that doesn't allow you time to think by demanding that you think all the time. And it's corruptive, okay? We have to learn implicitly. Okay. Implicit learning is subconscious. It's externally focused. You're not looking at your body parts and wondering where you are. You're focused on accomplishing the goal. And then my job as an instructor is to give you sensory information in your environment that encourages your body to choose the best pathway. Okay. Instead of telling you how to practice, I'm going to design the session so that your body's encouraged to choose a better way, right? So I think of it as let's say we're designing a plaza for a little shopping center, right? We're on a balcony, we're looking down, and I want everybody to go to the store on the right. That's my favorite biomechanical store. I want everybody to go there, right? So I design it with a walkway and then a breezeway and a doorway and expect that people will go over there and go into my store. But I look out there and there's people in the street get hurt. There's people on the other side at places where they have bad biomechanics and things like that. But the body doesn't care what I tell it. It doesn't want to listen to what I say. It only wants to accomplish important goals. And so what I do is I have to put something there. And in this case, if I built a hedge at the end of the sidewalk, right?
Right.
Then you would go to the hedge, you would have to take a right, the traffic would all go into the store. Right. Now, once we get them in there and they realize, wow, this is the best store ever, I'm never leaving, I'm going to be here forever, then I can take the hedge away. Sure. So that's called a constraints-led approach. And in motor learning science, the constraint instead of the hedge is I got to change the environment, the task, or the athlete. I have to do something that keeps them from doing a thing that's screwing them up, or do something that is so powerful in another direction that they don't want to do the thing to screw them up, okay? Right. And then after they're in the store, and that's where we get things like connection balls and tilted mounds and clubs and things like that. We use
got all that back here.
And all we're doing is changing the sensory information. Remember, I can't make you move. Your coach can't make you move. Your thoughts can't make you move. We all, in time compressed situations, the sensory information makes us move. It's called direct perception, okay? It's like, okay, I'm walking through a field and I have a bird over there, right? And I see the bird. If there's no time constraint, I can look at the bird and I can interpret what it is and I can tell my body to move to go see it. But if the bird's flying at me and there's time pressure, the bird made me move. The sensory information in time compressed situation makes you move. Mm-hmm. And so as you realize as a coach, you don't get so heavy on words and cues. You get to go, all right, how can I change the information? What he touches, what he sees, what his balance organ is telling him, what he hears, what he feels. How can I change that to where he goes a different way that might help him find motor control of the, you know?
What about for like an example, if you don't mind? Like say I do have a flying open problem, mm-hmm. and the terminology is not clicking for me. What are some of like those constraint things that you would give the athlete? Okay,
so let's say that you're flying open with your lead leg. You're opening it independently, right? Yeah. Okay. Well, the first thing I have to do is look at your back leg and see why is he doing this. So I need to know something about your hardware, right? Because Scherzer has hips that like to internally rotate, mm-hmm. and so he can land across his body, and he has enough mobility to turn that around. Verlander doesn't. I've evaluated him; his feet go this way, and he can't turn that around, so he has to do it differently, right?
Right.
And so you have to look at the hardware first, right? And then you have to go, okay, now, was his lead leg flying open because he was shooting himself across toward the on-deck circle, and that's his way of fighting his way back? Then you have to go further back and go, how do I encourage him to use his back leg differently, right? And then, so there's a lot of different ways you can do that. You can, what we do in motor learning theory, we call it dynamic systems theory. We identify what we call attractors, which are the key parts of the movement, right?
Right.
And when it's unstable, what you do is you make it more unstable, so it has to self-organize stability. So we would perturb that. We would shake it up. We would have him do like drop in from a box. We would use a water bag over his head so that he can't predict the stimulus, and then he has to organize a stable back leg.
Right.
And when he feels that, he no longer has the need or the desire to open his lead leg. And so many times you can trace it back. I always say this, man, the first move is like picking up chicks. You got to get the first move right. Right? And because if that's right, everything else downstream, a lot of the things that we see they're doing that are inefficient downstream were a compensation for a bad first move. You know?
Yeah.
And so we actually did some studies. We had about 500 guys that we had data on, and we looked at what are the, we did this machine learning algorithm, what are the primary contributors to velocity, and then we flipped it around, what are the primary contributors to arm health, right? And when we looked at our attractors, back leg, lead leg, and trunk were the top three for velocity, okay? And then for arm pain, we flipped that around, arm pain, back leg, arm action, and decel were number 1, 2, and 3. So the message to me is there's lots of ways to throw hard.
Sure.
Because you can do anything you want with your arm. You can ignore it. You can decel any way you want, right?
Sure.
But there's not lots of ways to throw hard and safe for a long time. Right?
Well, yeah, because some guys like you would look at, a guy that you would say like, yeah, this guy doesn't move well, but like then he does something other like extremely efficient, and then that kind of compensates for the overall goal.
He can cover it. Yeah, exactly. Yeah. So our mission here is when we get a guy in, let's get his back leg stable, let's get his arm action and his decel good, and then we start adding energy through the trunk and the lower and the lower half. And so it's really in a pretty effective way.
Well, that's just a true testament to like why individualized training stuff is so important. We were talking a little bit before the show started, and it's like we can't put everyone in a box,
And that's why I love this job. I cannot believe this is my real big boy job. Like I'm making a living. Cannot believe every day. Because every player that comes in, first of all, they're cool people. It's like,
they're baseball players, man. Of course we're cool.
They're baseball players. We always had the best times of our life in the locker room, right? And so they're cool people. They're good people, and they're all on the same mission. And every guy's a puzzle. Every single guy is a puzzle. Like whatever level they're at, little leaguer to big leaguer, it's like solving a puzzle every time, and it's really cool when you see it work and they get what they want. It's really
that's where that positive OCD perfectionism takes over. That's the fun part, dude. Like if you're a guy that loves to solve puzzles, every day is a new one, right? Like
it's me, right?
Yeah, we can take like input from past cases or whatever, but at the end of the day, it's like, hey, today's a new opportunity to learn something new about someone else, and go about
it's really cool.
Yeah,
cool. So,
I think I geek out on that stuff, man. I said, we can sit here and talk forever, but I want to segue, and we'll piggyback off of. I have all of your blog posts up here. I'll link those in the show notes. But like I said in the beginning, where we want to piggyback off of the previous episode I did on the new frontier in baseball rehab, how there's a big disconnect there, and I know you have a really good piece I encourage everyone to check out. If you could, man, just like we'll piggyback off each other, but like highlight some really important topics as far as like the interesting dynamic of the return to throwing program that we have right now.
Yeah, so I've been talking to a lot of guys around the country about this. I talked to Ron Wolforts, who's been a dear friend, Alan Jaeger, same thing. I talked to Dr. Stephen Oster about it, Dr. Ed Faringer that I mentioned. Everybody that will listen, I talked to him about this whole idea about the rehab process. And so the article that I wrote focused mainly on the very beginning part, right? The immediate post-op rehab, and then the return to throwing. So I kind of attacked it from the physical therapy angle. And I've been fortunate enough to do some work with the Rays, Tampa Bay Rays, and I got to know them pretty well. And their team physician is Dr. Coco Eaton, and he's trained, with Dr. Andrews. He's a really fine surgeon, and actually operated on my son one time. So that was two of my sons. That was really cool. But he lets me come and sit in on surgery with him. I get to watch him.
Oh, no kidding?
Yeah, I just scrub in and watch a UCL and watch a labor.
Oh, that freaks me out.
It's really cool. Yeah, so I was watching him do a UCL one day, and he harvested the graft from the palmaris longus. He was bragging about how long it was. They really get off on how long they can make that tendon, And then he skins the meat off of it, and he drills the holes in the arm, and then he threads it through like 3 times, right? 3 times through, and he's like, "Look at that, man! That's a really good fixture, And he kind of screws it in and gets it all settled right into the holes, and then he grabs the guy's arm in the OR. The guy's unconscious, and he goes wham, 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 and he just whacked it. Like, I was like, holy. Wow.
Guy's gonna wake up.
I would fire one of my therapists for doing that post-op. Like you would just be like, you would never do that, right? Because we're all worried about the graft. And I kind of regrouped, and I was like, wow, that's pretty stable. And he said this to me. He said, Randy, and this is what I wrote in the article, so it'll be redundant when you go to the article. But he said, Randy, that ligament that we just made isn't really the stabilizer of the elbow. It is a lattice for the scar tissue to form. So the scar tissue forms around that ligament, and that serves as the stabilizer. The scar is actually the stabilizer, right? And so he said, when we go in for a second one, when a guy blows out the second time, he goes, when we go in there, it looks like a grenade went off. It looks like this whole scar is just boom, right? So that kind of got me to thinking, about scar tissue. There's this law in physiology called Davis's law, and it says that all human tissue organizes itself to resist the stresses under which we place it, right? Sure. And so if we don't add any stress at all, the scar organizes randomly like a plate of spaghetti noodles that you left in the sink all night. And everything's sticking together, and now everything's stuck, and now you have to you have to kind of break that scar tissue loose. And I've taught courses, continuing education courses for physical therapists about the return to throwing, and we talk about this, prepare your patient for the moment. And the moment is that about 9 months out, when we finally get on the mound and start throwing hard, they're going to experience that moment. And I show a picture of a guy looking like he's about to vomit, because that's what I felt like when it happened. There's a pop, there's a loud pop, and they think, oh my gosh, I've torn my UCL again, right?
Sure.
And more times than not, it wasn't a UCL tear, it was just scar tissue breaking loose. And now you have some more freedom, but you have to let it go for a couple of days and rest it, and then you get back on it. And I started thinking about the scar tissue, like for 16 weeks, at least 8 weeks in the typical UCL protocol, we sit in a brace and we don't move our arm at all into any sort of valgus stress. Mm-hmm. We just let the scar heal. Like we do some range of motion, flexion extension, supination, pronation, in unilateral planes, isolated planes, but it's never moving in the way it needs to move to resist.
Right.
And especially no valgus, because I understand you have to protect it's not really the graft, it's where the bone meets the new tendon. That's the vulnerable part, right? And so I started thinking about, okay, what if we just let that thing scar down for all that time? I think that the guys that are lucky, that when they feel the pop at 9 months or whatever, it occurred like over here, like on the forearm, because that's where randomly their scar tissue adhered. What about the ones that it adheres right on the joint? Those guys, when it pops, that's the second blow. That's the second UCL. I'm like, wow, we have to do a better job of guiding the organization of that scar.
Sure.
So I think that early on we need more like oscillations, little gentle valgus stresses to teach to not only align the scar tissue, but then also you got to think about the neurologic organization, the motor control component. It's so disrupted when they come out of the surgery because they haven't done anything that resembles a throw in so long.
Sure.
They now have to train the coordination pattern over it, right? And so if we can responsibly, I'm not saying we're going to be idiots about this, and I understand that we have to know what we're doing, but if we can responsibly begin to be a little more, I won't like to use the term aggressive, let's say progressive, in early rehab, so that we have an organized scar. I think we could probably ward off some of these 8-9 months out guys that feel that moment. And
the setbacks, man.
Maybe, the setbacks. And Alan was talking about this in the podcast last time. The setback occurs when they go from 120 to the mound, right?
Oh.
And that's about the time where we feel the pop. Like as soon as we get on the mound, we start throwing, start increasing intent. And so those things go together. It goes together. What we need to do is guide that recovery a little better throughout. Instead of being so protective early, let's be proactive in guiding the scar tissue as it forms, okay? And so then we talked about the corruptive nature of that early return to throw protocol, like 25 throws from 45 feet. It was written when it was still okay to smoke cigarettes in the dugout. Right?
I love that one.
It was way back then, right?
Is that not okay these days? Are we vaping in the dugout now?
Taiwan, we went to Taiwan, it's a thing still, okay? But over here, I don't think it's cool. So anyway, so we do that 20. You've been to rehab throws. You've done rehab throws. Oh. How'd that 40%, that 45-foot throw, that 50%, how'd that feel? Did it
this
feel
is such a
like
personal top. This is look at this is what I have.
Yeah.
Because I was and I don't mean like any disrespect when I talk about my past and stuff, but like you're in a sling, and what happened for me was like my bone started forming, and then it built up like that blockade. And now I don't have that extent, but then I had to learn how to like throw again because I'm like needing to go into early pronation and everything.
You're a different cat, yeah. Your arm's different now, yeah. So look, when you hypertrophy a muscle with weight training, every time you make a muscle stronger, you have a new coordination pattern. So if you're lifting and not throwing at the same time, you're in trouble because you're going to come out of that lift and you're going to have to re-coordinate that movement, okay? Mm-hmm. So it's not just physiologic organization, it's neurologic organization as well. And you know that those first throws that you made they felt nothing like a throw.
Let's say I short hopped a couple times at 45 feet.
Weird. And how many people come out of rehab with yips?
Too many?
So remember I talked to you about the sensory information that you get when you have time pressure and then not time pressure, right? Mm-hmm. Okay, so the one sensory stream is called the ventral stream, and it's for organizing the overall movement. And when you have time to think about it, it's for what What am I going to do? Okay. The other one is the how am I going to do it, and then how am I going to coordinate? And that's when there's time pressure. It's called the dorsal stream, and it's the direct perception theory. Okay, so it's the more primitive system. It's like if you take a stick and touch a slug on his back, he moves. The information you gave him moved him. He doesn't have the capacity to interpret it. He just moves. Okay, and so we all have that system in us. And when there's time pressure, we move based on the information we get from the environment. It's direct perception. Okay, and so in one stream, you're using it when you don't have time, right? The other one is when you have time. And I think that if we get you in the middle, you're in trouble. Like when you're bouncing back and forth between, do I have time? Do I not have time? Do I have time? Those two inputs are providing garbled information, and I don't know how to move, okay? Right. And so guys come out at rehab because we've been so protective and throwing in such a weird manner that we have this strange coordination pattern, and we're kind of caught between both streams of sensory information, and their body isn't getting good information to know how to throw. And so they get this thing called the yips, okay? I think I'm going to write a blog called "The Thing Is Not a Thing," okay? Because I think the thing is, for whatever reason, that athlete is getting bad sensory information. Because if you remember, I can't make you move. The only thing that can make you move is the sensory information, right? So that guy, for whatever reason, is getting garbled or bad sensory information, and so we've had a lot of success with guys with the yips and just changing the information, just mixing it up. We use the feed flex, we have them run and throw, we have them throw footballs, we have them throw clubs, we have them throw all kinds of stuff. And so it's really, really cool. So
yeah. That's a good segue into like you did another blog post on why not long tossing and not throwing weighted balls might get you hurt.
Wait, I can't hear what you're saying. Oh, there you go. You're back.
Am I back? All right, let me just write that one down. We'll go hit the edit button on that one because technology.
All right, good.
So that's a good segue into the blog you did that I absolutely love, like the variance of throws, right? So like why not long tossing, why not throwing weighted balls might get you hurt. And this is where we can input the word paradox because there's, the whole like throwing the same way is, maybe can I shed some light on like why that may be perceived as bad?
Sure. So the more I've thought about this, one of the things I think that might be holding us back from true progress is I think what I consider to be a fundamentally flawed assumption that all injuries are due to overuse, right? You throw too much, you get hurt. We see the same thing in runners, like they come in with shin splints, the doc says don't run, okay?
Sure.
It's not that you're running too much, you're running wrong, okay? Run differently, right? And so it's the paradox, the truth and paradox for me is this. People that want you to have a repeatable movement pattern, they want you to be able to repeat your mechanics, also tend to suggest that we need to control the workload. We need to not overuse but if you think about it, the definition of overuse is doing the same thing over and over and over again, right? And so if we get such rigid mechanics that we do the exact same thing over and over again, that's going to add stress over time to the exact same muscles in the exact same way. So in the video that I made, I talked about when we used to do push-ups in the military. When you start to burn out, you change your grip, you change your arms. So you go, okay, maybe use the muscles this way and then this way. And then if you've ever been on a long trip and put your foot on the gas pedal in the exact same place all the time, it starts to burn after a while. You have to, I got to move my foot around,
Yeah.
And you think about people that get overuse injuries in factories, they're just repetitive motion injuries. Well, we're doing the same exact movement over and over again. You're using the muscles in the exact same way over and over again. And Rob Gray was brilliant about this when he talked about weighted ball training in our summit recently.
Yeah.
You want the system to be stable yet flexible, right? Stable, but when it gets perturbed, it needs to be able to right itself, right? So I think of the movement of pitching. If you've ever watched the Winter Olympics and you've seen the luge, remember the luge guy who's on the little sled by himself? He's going down the sled, right? And if he goes with a small bandwidth of deviations, he wins the race, right? But if he's like all over the place like this, now he loses. We got to take this movement that guys are doing and turn it into this, but it can't be rigid. It can't just be one movement because the first time he gets an ice rut or a gust of wind, he's off the course.
Right.
The first time you step in a hole where the opponent's foot is in a different place, which is every time, or the first time the ball's wet or the umpire's squeezing you, or you just get outside of your movement a little bit.
Different variabilities.
You've never rehearsed getting it back, right? And so that's the flexibility part, right? And Rob pointed out that weighted ball training isn't really about the stability of the system. It's about the flexibility of the system. When you practice with weighted balls and when you throw long toss, the value of it to me is every throw is a little bit different. right? Within a bandwidth, right? And every throw is a little bit different. And so you rehearse the correction implicitly. You rehearse the writing of the luge implicitly. And I think that if we don't vary the movement pattern, if we don't practice the correction, I think we may be putting our athletes at risk. And so, the knock against long toss is it adds stress and every throw is different. That's the exact value of long toss.
I know, and that's the thing, right? Because like the body needs stress, you need to adapt.
Yeah.
And that's
even the ligament, right? And the ligament has a blood supply. It's not a great one, but it has blood and it can be remodeled. I've been in surgery, and every time Dr. Eaton would do a surgery, he loves to flip up the torn half of the ligament and go, Randy, look at how thick that ligament is, right? Look how thick it is. Well, it occurred to me, if the ligament is thickening, what is it trying to do? It's trying to remodel.
Sure.
So it can be remodeled to resist the stress. But more importantly, we can remodel the movement so that we attenuate the stress. So we take the stress off of the ligament, right? So it doesn't have to undergo so much stress. And so we have to add stress. If we don't, send an astronaut up into space for 30 days. What happens? He comes down, his muscles are weak, his bones are brittle because there's no stress. If we remove stress, we make the tissue weaker, less robust, less resistant to perturbation or upsetting, right? If add stress and then practice the variability, we make it tougher, we make this tissue tougher, and we practice getting our arms back into the place where we need to be to protect the ligament.
Yeah.
And
I love it, dude. I'm currently working on a piece right now of like what is athletic arm path? What is like the ability to like be so athletic that you can throw a ball 300 feet with arc, rainbow throw, and hit the guy in the chest. But then when you come in and do a 100-foot pull down, you're able to do the same thing. And like we look at those guys that have that variance in throws, and then you put them on a mount, and it's like they have the ability to like make that athletic adjustment like that. They cut one off, they cut their four seamer off, and it's not like, oh crap, now I got to go through my mechanical checklist of I got to get the ball out on time and I got to be on, I got to blah, blah, blah. It's just like, oh, I'm so athletic right now that I'll just throw it there. And that was like, that was a big thing in my career too, was like when because I was in a 120-foot throwing program. I was in an organization that did that, and that's not disrespectful or anything. I get it. But it was like that was a time in my career where my command was terrible. I wasn't throwing hard. I had no athletic ability. I was throwing like a robot, and it showed because of my practice. Yeah.
We went through this whole phase in the United States where it was about repeatable delivery.
Sure.
Well, you can't repeat your delivery. Everything's going to be different. Every single throw. No matter what you do, you'll never repeat. Now, we want it to be within a bandwidth, right? Mm-hmm. But you'll never repeat it. So we have to practice the adjustments. And to me, the athletic arm path is the one that can, no matter what happens, I'm a little off on my back leg, which led me to be a little off on my lead leg, which made my trunk a little early, and my arm kind of flew out a little bit, but I can still correct it and get the ball where I want to get it. That's the athletic. In flight. And the only way you get there, Robby, you don't get there through explicit learning. You got to get there through implicit because there's not enough time for the athlete to think about all that.
And you can like manipulate your training environment though to like get you better equipped for that, right?
Because the sensory information makes the guy move. You just change the information enough, and it requires some creativity. It requires a whole toolbox full of ideas.
Sure.
And a lot of trial and error. And you go, let me try this and see, And then you have to also be careful not to get like. I don't want the guy, holding 6 connection balls and look like the Michelin Man, have this belt hooked to his waist and this. I don't want to take away the freedom, but I can just make little subtle changes. Ron Wolforth and I always talk about this. Our mission is to make the change and leave no fingerprints, right? Like be there, nudge the guy toward better efficiency, and his body doesn't even know we're there. And it's so fun. But here's the thing. If we're really going to do that, Robby, we got to eliminate silo, right? At our place, I'm the certified strength and conditioning specialist. I'm the PT. I'm the strength coach. And then all the guys that work for me, we're all cross-trained to do everything. Like our director of play development, Wes McGuire, he's great with pitch design and improving mechanical efficiency, but he can go in the gym and run our Savage strength and training program because we all need to be able to do it all. And the cool thing is, our whole system is set up we talked about the attractors, right? And which one, and so when we do our evaluation physically and then biomechanically, what are the unstable attractors? What's not working well? What part isn't working well? And then we attack it in every phase. So the gym, our strength coach, Alan Cole, will write a program that's lead leg, back leg, and trunk dominant, because that's what this guy was going to be efficient at. Or arm, decel, and
you tailor a program to get the most out of the athlete.
In every phase, though, like in his warm-up, in his recovery, in his strength training, in his power workouts, in his throwing, and the whole thing. And this way we have because there was a time 7 or 8 years ago when if you said to me, hey, I got a guy with a lead leg disconnection, what drill do you have for that? Sure. I would have given you a drill, okay? Sure. But what you have to realize is that the drill to me is like if we're laying a sidewalk, it's the finishing right up to the front door, feathering it to the door, because it's the most close to real, right? Sure. But all the other movement that he's doing in his warm-up, in his movement enhancement exercises, we call them our mobility, so our movement enhancers, what he's doing in the gym, what he's doing in building power, all of that has to be the foundation of the last thing, which is the drill. And now we get the movement that's real.
Yeah, and that's why I think the just throwing a baseball in general, there's like so many disconnects too, because someone, like you said, like will say, hey, my lead leg block is poor, so like now let me over manipulate a stiff front leg, when it's like maybe that's because you're not getting in optimal positions before front foot strike.
And you know what happens if you over manipulate a lead leg block? If you intentionally try to block your lead leg. Because to me, the lead leg block occurs because the back leg was really good and put the leg in the right position to do it.
Right.
Okay. When we intentionally try to block the lead leg, we lock it out. We end up pushing into the mound. It creates an anterior pelvic tilt. Once we create anterior pelvic tilt, we lose lumbar stability and we lose optimal length in our abdominals. And now we get disconnection. The timing is off because we intentionally try to make that happen.
Yeah.
It is a byproduct. It is not something we try to achieve. It's something that occurs because everything else upstream was good. Okay, it's a dashboard indicator to me that things went well in the engine. You know, it's not something we strive to get.
Would you say that about velocity too? Like high power output is a byproduct of just having movement, strength, capacity, and just getting into optimal positions?
I think so. I think that, of course, you have to have the intent to throw hard. Our goal, because the body wants to accomplish goals, right? But that's what I meant when I said we have to make sure that the gains are made through improvement of mechanical efficiency, by achieving optimal link, finding co-contraction, remove slack, and optimizing the link between the hardware and the software so that then the ball comes out harder.
Yeah.
Because we're trying to throw harder. But if it's only on intent, the body will organize itself to find a way, but it won't always find the safest or the most efficient way. And I think if you dupe your body into thinking you're only going to have to do it once long enough, your body realizes that you're lying to it.
Yeah, that's when you talk about like that forced velocity.
Yeah, we're not going to let you in. And you can see that. Guys will gain, and then it'll just fade. Like, why am I losing? Well, because you really didn't become an efficient mover. You just try to throw hard. Right.
And we need every piece of the puzzle. Like, we need to check every box.
The whole thing. Yeah, the whole thing. And it is so multifaceted, which is fascinating to me because in a dynamic system, there's no noise. Everything matters, right? And this is why we can't solve the problem with science, because in the scientific method, you have to control the variability, right? You have the independent variable, and then you have the dependent variable. And then you got to control all the other variables. And if you don't, then when they start interacting, the scientific method crumbles. So you have to use mathematics. And so dynamic systems theory, I don't want to sound nerdy, but it's based in differential calculus.
You already have.
We have a full-time mathematician on site. We got a guy that does nothing but math for us, okay? And he helps us organize all the data. And now what you do is you realize that everything matters. Like, you know, you could stub a toe and it results in something going on in your arm. Everything's important, right? And so you have to put it all together and then let the body organize itself based on the sensory information that you provide to find the most efficient way to move.
This is like, it's a really good conversation to have because like you look at the baseball industry, like what, 15, 20 years ago, and it was like the best pitching coaches were just those guys that did it really well themselves. And now we're kind of evolving into a pattern of like, okay, now the best pitching coaches are those that see the big picture like yourself, like where you need movement capacity, like strength capacity, all of these other like underlying issues rather than just the 30 frames per second that the eye's perceiving of, okay, this is how I did it. Maybe you should do it. And now like that's what I think is so cool about the constant evolution. And now that obviously we have like all of this data that's almost giving us these absolutes, right? And it's like now we can't really just guess. We're like, we need this and that. It's crazy.
Yeah. Well, and the other part about data is this, like we always have to remember that the way we move creates the data, right? The data didn't just come out. It was our movement that created the data, right? And so the data tells us a little bit about the movement, but the data alone doesn't fix the problem, right? you have to change the mover to change the data, right? And so understanding how to optimize the evolution of movement for the athlete is really the hub around which our whole process here revolves.
Well, that's what separates your whole process, right? Like,
I
know you're not going to brag about your process. I'll do the brag. I'll do the bragging for you. There was one topic that I get a lot of questions on, and someone actually asked a question when I had posted that you were going to come on the show, and you mentioned I think you alluded to a little bit earlier when you were talking about how, like, when you lift and you aren't throwing, how, like, things change, and then when you go to throw, it like feels different. So now, are you advocate for off-season throwing, like kind of that whole year-round throwing dynamic?
Mm-hmm. Yeah, we're okay. So I have a couple things there. First of all, the thing is, we never want to let the tissue get disorganized. Okay, in rehab, don't let it get disorganized. In throwing, don't let it get disorganized, right? And so the day after we throw, every time you throw, you damage cells, every time. And the day after you throw, those cells are being replaced by these cells that are in your bloodstream called the undifferentiated mesenchymal cells, or UMCs. They're like stem cells, but stem cells are like these on steroids. They just float around the body. When you cut your skin, these cells have this miraculous ability to go to the area and go, oh wow, you damaged a tendon, boom, they morph into a tendon cell and replace it, right? And so whatever cells you've damaged, your body's quickly trying to evacuate those, and then the new cells are forming to replace them. But without stress, they have no idea how to organize. They show up and go they're like, I'm the new tendon. Yeah, me too. And they don't know, they're like laying on top of each other and they're all disorganized. So you have to provide a little bit of stress, which is why we came up with this idea of the DuraThrow training sock, to add a little bit of stress the day after we throw, right? You got one over there, I see it.
Yeah, I was like, where's the thing at?
Yeah. The day after we throw, because it's a low stress way to take your arm through the movement that created the trauma without creating more trauma. Okay, so now let's take that concept on a macro scale. You finish your season, the season's over, you high five everybody, and you go home and you don't pick up a baseball till January. Mm-hmm. Everything is healing, which is the goal. But it's just like post-op rehab. We cannot let it heal in a disorganized fashion, right? And so we need some stress that's specific to what we're going to have to do, which is throwing, right? And so what we do is we don't, it depends on the guy. If I have a guy who is going to get released from pole ball if he doesn't gain 3 miles an hour, he can't stop. He's done, right? He's got to throw through that winter, right? We got to try to gain. I don't want to wait till January and hope we get it, right? If I got a guy that has terrible command or he's injured, he cannot just rest, okay? So that guy may have to throw through it, okay? The guy who's performing above his competitive peer group and he's doing well and he wants to take some time off, what we do is we go into what we call our incubation period, okay? I think I might have stole that term from Al, okay? Incubation period, where, I don't know, you know how it is.
Trademark.
It's just everything. It's like, I don't know where I got it, okay? People get on me a lot, hey, you didn't give me credit for that. I go, I would if I didn't remember where I heard it.
Right,
Sorry.
No, I hear you. Same way.
Yeah, and if people throw my stuff out, it's like, whatever, I don't care, whatever. Just, okay.
I'll remember that.
Yeah. So anyway, in the off season, we go into incubation. So we might we do an evaluation. We continue our movement exercises with, our instability loads and all of our mobility stuff. We're still working out. And then we get in our training sock and we throw 3 or 4 days a week, just because you can throw at full speed, because the coordination pattern is different at half speed or quarter speed than it is at full speed. So we can throw at full speed with very little stress. And all we're doing is trying to keep the tissue organized so that while we build in the off season, we are coordinating the new muscles that we're gaining, right? Okay, just think of it this way. Like, it's really simple to me. Like, is it easier to clean your house if you're OCD, right?
That's the worst.
Right? So it's a whole lot easier to clean your house every day, a little bit.
Yeah,
and then
constantly.
Let it go to heck and then try to fix it before the spring barbecue, right? Like, let's keep it organized all year long. Now, I had some scouts from New York Yankees in to see us, a few weeks ago, and they asked me this question: why we draft these guys and why do they lose velocity? And I said, well, I have a few ideas. Number one, whether you like it or not, the kids you're drafting, first of all, they're throwing year round, because tournaments are set up to where when I got a high school kid, I'm lucky if I can get 3 weeks where he's not playing games, right?
Yeah.
So, and they're throwing year round, and that's what they're doing, right? And then we get them, we send them a rookie ball, say throw 10 innings, and we say don't pick up a ball in January, right? And Dr. Marcus Elliott from P3 Sports, he said to me one time, he said, the number one predictor of injury is the delta, the change. the delta, right? Manage the change, right? And so those guys that have thrown you around for the first time in their lives, they haven't thrown you around now, right? And they come out, and how many of them come out in the first spring training hurt, right? And how many of them come out of their shutdown throwing 82, and they're like, what's wrong? And now they have to rush to try to ramp it up.
Yeah.
And so we change what they do, okay? The other thing is we draft a guy throwing 96, and we assume that he rolled out of bed throwing 96. That dude trained to get to 96, so he's doing something to get him there. And then we get him, and instead of saying, hey, what have you been doing? Let's see if we can see what your training plan is. And we just say, this is the way we do it right here. This is our way.
Right.
And do it our way. And so so your guys that went to 120, and it was the delta, it changed. And so when you're talking about injury, when you're talking about decreased performance, when you're talking about loss of command, pain, whatever, look for the delta. What changed, right? It's the biggest predictor of what's going to go wrong. And so I think that we change these guys sometimes because this is the way we do it, and results.
And there's no that, and I think MLB organizations are doing a much better job now of having that conversation. Because before there was no like relationship. There was no conversation. It was like, hey, it's black and white. This is what we do. This is what we do because we have X amount of World Series or whatever the case may be, right? And now it's like, oh, hey, let's sit down and like, what do you do? What do you do well? Maybe we can like tinker a little bit of stuff and have that conversation of, hey, this is where we think we could maybe, optimize your pitching performance more. But I think they're doing a much better job nowadays, because I was the same way, man, like through all the time. And when I was 18, I got drafted out of high school. And then it was like, as soon as I was done, I was like, man, I just threw so much. Like I'm done for 2 to 3 months. You pick up that ball, it's like, talk about spider webs, like, oh, I just got to get the spider webs out. 86, 88, my first couple spring training outings, and it was brutal.
Freaking out. Now you're freaking out. Now you're trying to go get intentional velocity.
I freaked out. Heck yeah. Because you're a lot of those guys are young, and it's like all they know is the adapt or die of like, crap, where's my peers at, and a lot of their peers are maybe a lot higher than them. So then they start forcing it, and then that's where bad things happen.
Yeah. I know. It's and look, all of it. You mentioned the word, right? What is coaching? What is training, right? At the end of the day, a master teacher is someone who can build a relationship with a player and understand what that guy needs, and he has the knowledge. And you can have all the knowledge you want, but if you don't build a relationship with the player, you don't have any way to connect with that guy and know what's working with him.
That's literally what it is, man. And like even coming from like being a player. And it's like the best instructors that I've had my whole entire career haven't really necessarily been the ones that like know the most or have succeeded the most in their development, but it's like the ones that are able to have that one-on-one relationship and have that constant communication. Because then you start feeling comfortable as an athlete, like comfort breeds success or breeds confidence, which breeds success. And that's like where I am is like, maybe we have all X, Y, Z to work on, but it's like we're in this together. And I think once an athlete kind of has that stability of, okay, this guy's like in it for the right reasons, then it changes the whole dynamic of development.
And they know right away. They know it's true. I mean, you can't fake it. You can't fake it, right?
Absolutely.
It's just like teachers know, like students know, teacher doesn't care. You know, right? And
absolutely.
And so and honestly, come on, that's just being a normal human.
A human being, not a robot.
Like let me help you in any way I can. I'll do anything I can. Let's work this out together.
Absolutely.
I don't have all the answers. And Ron Wolforth and I talk about this a lot. I go, Ron, we were doing things that we didn't know why we were doing them for a while. Like, and then it'll happen a lot. The science will show, oh, we were right,
Yeah.
And he goes, why do you think that happens all the time? I said, Ron, I think, and he probably taught me this. I said, I think it comes down to being humble enough to allow the student to teach you how to teach him.
Yeah.
Like
you can learn from everyone, really.
Yeah. Like, look, you got to go in saying, I know a lot, but I don't know everything. And we talked about this before we came on the air, right? Mm-hmm. The one thing, I want to show him that I'm confident and that I want to know I know what I'm doing, right? But if the Randy Sullivan circa 2019, if you come to me and you say you got it all figured out, we're not going to be friends.
Yeah.
Because none of us have it figured out. We're all trying to help each guy individually, and so nobody has all the answers. we're all evolving, we're all learning, and you're just trying to be a little less wrong every day.
And then you get the respect factor too, and I think that's like a huge component as well. And it's about like, even me, like I fall victim of this too, is like I struggle with like checking the ego at the door, right? Like check your pride at the door.
Yeah.
Like I think I know a lot, and like I perceive to know a lot, and I do all of this stuff that portrays me knowing a lot, but like I'll be straight up honest with someone that comes to me and has like this deficiency or that, and it's like, hey, this is what I have for that, and if it doesn't work, then like let's seek out someone else, man. Like if the goal is to constantly improve the athlete, then you'll do whatever it takes, but if your goal is like that money, like hungry, quick dollar theory,
or the ego, I gotta be right. Absolutely. I gotta be the smartest guy in the room. I know.
I hear you. Well, hey man, I want to be respectful of your time, dude, but we'll hop off here now, but can you tell my audience where they can find you as far as your social media platforms? I got your website linked, and
FloridaBaseballRanch.com, at Florida Baseball Ranch, at Randy Sullivan PT is sort of my personal one where I can be a little more edgy, I guess, and say things. So that's where we are. We're on Instagram at FloridaBaseballRanch.com, at Florida Baseball Ranch. I think it's FL Baseball Ranch. I think it is. And so, or you can call us at our really cool 800 number. It's 866-STRIKE-3.
Is it really?
That's our number, 866-787.
Oh, I see it right here on your website, 866-STRIKE-3.
There you go.
I still don't understand how those work, like the T9. Remember those?
That's really cool. So anyway, so you can reach us in any way. If you call, you'll get Amy, my business partner, my CFO, COO. She is fantastic. She'll walk you through. Our hallmark is this: we're going to customize a plan that meets you where you are. So we have our weekend camps, we have our week-long summer and winter programs. We have what we call a precision strike one-on-one evaluation where you come on for a day. But if you call Amy, she'll customize whatever you want. She'll make it work for whatever you need, and we're really good about that.
And you guys are in Lakeland?
We're in Lakeland. Yeah, we're in Lakeland. Yeah.
I gotcha.
Right equidistant between Orlando and Tampa Airport, 40 minutes from each airport. Yeah.
My dad came up with the Tigers, so I spent a lot of time in
Nice. Yeah, that's about 10 minutes away from us. Really cool.
I was a little baby. I don't remember anything. But hey, man, thank you for your time. I'll sign you off the air. But thanks again, brother. Appreciate you.
All right, Robby. Thanks.